recovers the entire system. Yeah, let's go with custom recovery just to see what options we get. So we have complete recovery, but it says it's only available through the recovery media kit, and I mean, there's a little bit of lag, it seems. I feel like it should be playing back a little bit smoother.
That sent the price of Bitcoin rising $10,000 in maybe an hour or so. So we went from 85,000 to 95,000. We're still holding on to most of those gains as I'm recording this podcast live. We're still above 93,000 on Bitcoin, but Bitcoin wasn't the big mover. And it wasn't even Ethereum, which was also up quite a bit, maybe 12, 13%. I think Bitcoin upped a similar amount. But the big movers were Solano, Cardano, Ripple. Those things ripped 30% or more. Why? It was because of a post on Truth Social that was highly touted all over X and all over the crypto sphere, and basically completely misconstrued and advertised as if Trump had just announced that a strategic reserve has been established, that it's a done deal, that it's going to happen, and it's going to include Ripple, Cardano, and Solana. That's why those three tokens went up the most, because they were specifically mentioned in the post as being part of the reserve that was supposedly going to be established. Well, all this, first of all, is BS, because no such announcement was actually made. So if you just read how the crypto crowd was communicating what was posted on Trump's account, you would think that it's a done deal. That was what the voters, the pumpers, wanted everyone to believe. And of course, I don't think it's a coincidence that it came out early Sunday afternoon when none of the official stock markets were trading, so none of the ETFs anywhere in the world are operating. They were still asleep in Asia. They waited for a time where the markets were as thin as possible so that the pump could create as big a rise as possible. So it was timed. And in fact, again, if you look at the chart intraday, they waited until Bitcoin was at the low that it had been of the day and just ready to just roll over to put out the post. And I think that one of the reasons that we got a bounce in crypto on Friday is that people were buying because they knew that this Sunday morning post was coming. They had the insider information, and they were able to load up specifically on these three tokens, and because they knew which ones were going to be in the post. In fact, they may have already written it on Friday, knowing that they were going to put it out there on Sunday. And so a lot of people got rich off of this, which really, the hypocrisy really bothers me, because I was watching, and I'm going to talk about the Elon Musk interview on Joe Rogan. And, I like the fact that they're talking about how these bureaucrats at the U.S. aid are getting rich, basically getting kickbacks from these bogus nonprofits, and how terrible it is that their families are getting rich because the government officials are taking advantage and exploiting their positions to enrich themselves. But that's exactly what Trump is doing with his family. They're getting rich off of this. If Trump was manipulating stocks, it'd be illegal. He could be impeached if he was, giving his family members inside information. Hey, I'm going to put a post out about this particular stock, so you should buy it now, or you should short it because it's going to be a negative post. And then they position themselves to profit. He comes out and he posts something, and the market tanks or goes up, and his kids sell out. Right? It's totally illegal. But since he's doing it with crypto, I guess it's completely legal. You can manipulate the crypto market. I guess it's not a crime. You can pump and dump all you want, even if you're the president of the United States, because that's what's going on. But I think it really undercuts, the message of the administration when we're trying to bust the people who did this at U.S. aid, and now, the first family or whoever else or whatever friends of the president are involved in this. But I'm going to read the post. This is the actual post that was misrepresented all over X as being, okay, this is it, the strategic reserve. So here's what he posted. A U.S. crypto reserve will elevate this critical industry after years of corrupt attacks by the Biden administration, which is why my executive order on digital assets directed the Presidential Working Group to move forward on a crypto strategic reserve that includes XRP, SOL, and ADA. I will make sure the U.S. is the crypto capital of the world. We are making America great again. Expiration point. Right? Now, first of all, just on an off subject, even if Donald Trump really thought that crypto is a really important industry that America should dominate in, the government should stay out of it. The government is not there to pick winners and losers. If Donald Trump wanted to pick winners and losers, he should have stayed in the private sector and done it with his own money. The government is not there to do this. That's central government planning. That's what the communists do. If it's a free market, and if Trump wants to be a free market president, he stays neutral. He doesn't try to decide, hey, crypto is the industry, and so we're going to subsidize it. We're going to use taxpayer money to buy these tokens, and not even the entire industry. Not only is he picking crypto as an industry, he's picking the individual tokens that he thinks are the ones that we need to have. Which, Trump should not be doing this. In reality, the country that is the winner in crypto is the one that wastes the least amount of money on it. Which is probably going to be China, right? Because this is a complete waste of time. This is a waste of resources. I'm going to get into our horrific trade deficit later, but our trade deficit will keep getting bigger if we waste our money on crypto. So the president is wrong. This is not an industry we want to dominate. It's a digital pyramid scheme. Why the hell would we want to dominate that? But, in a free market, you make mistakes. But the government is not supposed to be making those mistakes. Let the market do it. But now let me get back to this particular post. So nowhere in this post does he say anything has been decided. He refers to his executive order on digital assets. Yes, what did that order do? It directed the working group to study the potential of a crypto stockpile. That's it. He is referring to that group that is still studying the potential. They haven't determined anything. And of course, even if this group, which hasn't even come out with a finding, even if this working group were to recommend to the president that we have a strategic reserve of crypto, they got to sell it to Congress. The president just can't establish it on his own. They have to spend government money. They need a program. Congress has to enact it. Yes, we authorize the spending of public money, to buy these tokens, right? So even if they had done that, but he didn't say that. This is all BS. Now, I don't even think Trump wrote this. Do you think Trump knows that Cardano is ADA? I mean, I don't look it up. I didn't know that. I knew Solana with Ripple. I forgot what ADA. Do you think Donald Trump knows ADA? No, he did not compose this post. Somebody wrote it. Now, that the person who wrote it may have been the one that posted it. Now, maybe Trump, copied it. Somebody said, "Here, Mr. President, post this." But I doubt that even happened. I'm sure that there are some other people that Trump has given access to his account, and they made that post. But only after they had loaded up on those specific tokens. Now, the interesting thing about that post is that it didn't even mention Bitcoin. Right? So people are like, "Hey, we got a Bitcoin strategic reserve," and the post didn't even mention Bitcoin. So what happened was, I'm sure this went around like, "Oh my God, wait, is not even any Bitcoin in the reserve?" And so later on, maybe like an hour went by, and then Donald Trump makes another post, or whoever's posting on behalf of Donald Trump, and posts this. And obviously, BTC and ETH, as other valuable cryptocurrencies, will be at the heart of the reserve. I also love Bitcoin and Ethereum. And again, I don't think Trump wrote this. I think it was written for him, but it was damage control because they left out BTC and ETH from the original post, because that's not the one that everybody was going to dump, because they loaded up on the other coins because they can make more money. Those things are up 30%, more than twice the rally in Bitcoin, but they had to go back and fix it. But also, I think the whole idea of having a reserve of all these currencies, because he didn't just say Bitcoin and Ether, other valuable cryptocurrencies. Well, what are those? Like, how many are going to be in there, right? It's going to be like a reserve of all sorts of tokens that they're just going to pick, right? And they're going to load up this reserve. Anyway, I got another couple of thoughts on this topic, and then I'm going to move on. But we got a quick commercial break, so stick around. Right back. Today's podcast is brought to you in part.
Let me ask you a very simple question. How much fraud has Elon Musk and Donald Trump's Doge found so far? Is it $100,000 in fraud? Is it $1 million? Is it 10 million? Is it $1 billion or $10 billion in fraud? Are we getting anywhere close to the $2 trillion that they said they would find in fraud and inefficiencies? The answer is they have found zero fraud thus far. Aaron Rupar wrote a great piece about this on his Substack Public Notice, where he goes through and he explains that they are using all sorts of different vague and squishy terminology. They are calling things fraud, but they have not actually found a single dollar of fraud so far. Despite the hype, not a single fraud program or incident has been discovered. Now, instead of finding fraud, it is true that Doge has focused on dismantling federal agencies, canceling programs, threatening employees with firings or layoffs, demanding federal employees write a to-do list of what they worked on if they want to keep their job, especially if you're not loyal to Trump. We could look at the Department of Transportation, FAA lawyers, understaffing national parks, firing inspectors general, but they have not found any fraud whatsoever. They also say that they have saved a ton of money by canceling contracts. That's probably also a lie. Only a fraction of the dollars they say they've saved are actually accounted for. Some of the savings are simply contracts that have already been paid that they won't be doing again. But that's not really a savings. A lot of those were one-off contracts. Now, in order to try to contend with the fact that they are not really finding any fraud, last week, or maybe it was the week before, I played a clip for you where Donald Trump's deranged and delusional and extraordinarily dilapidated press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, was asked by a reporter, what about this is fraud? Aren't these just policies Trump doesn't like? and she didn't actually have an answer. So in order to try to remedy this, they're coming up with new words, new phrases. And one that Fox News propagandist Sean Hannity came up with is wrongful spending. Now let me define wrongful spending for you. Not fraud. Not fraud. Here's Hannity.
Now, of course, DOGE is rooting out waste, fraud, abuse, corruption all across the federal government. They've already recovered billions and billions of wrongful spending while reducing the size of government, and liberals now are screaming into the void. And
so a couple things here. First of all, no money has been recovered. Just nothing has been recovered. And it's funny because Hannity's going even further. Recovered. We're talking about canceling future spending. What are you talking about? We've recovered money. And then the thing that crawls up the screen is nonsense, right? I mean, these contracts that have been terminated, not a single one with evidence of fraud. Individuals that have been terminated. It's not fraud. Trump might say we want fewer employees, we want to save money in the future, but it's not fraud and you're not recovering any money. Now, when Trump was asked about it, he came up with this very vague thing.
So they sign a contract in a government agency, and it has 3 months, and the guy leaves that signed the contract, and nobody else is there, and they pay the contract for 10 years. Yeah. So the guy is getting checks for years and years and years, and he's telling his family, obviously, maybe it was crooked, maybe he paid to get the contract, or maybe he paid that they didn't terminate it, but
a lot of maybe here.
You know, we have contracts that go forever, and they've been going for years. And they're supposed to end in 3 months or 5 months or 2 years or something, and they go forever. So the guy is either crooked, where he knew this was going to happen, or he's crooked because he's getting payments that he knows he shouldn't be getting. But they're finding things like that.
Now, of course, nothing like that has been found. Nothing has been found. Is it true that some contracts get renewed? Yes, that's true. Is it true that over time the need for certain services may change? Of course. But that's not fraud. And hilariously, and this is kind of when I knew that they realized they've got nothing, Peter Alexander asked Caroline Levitt whether any of it is actual fraud. Like, there's a lot of stuff you're pointing to, papers, contracts, but is anything actual fraud, legally speaking? And Caroline Levitt said that that's clever.
Fraud, of course, is a crime. So have you turned over evidence of fraud to the Justice Department, and when should we expect to see those indictments?
It's a clever question. There has been extensive fraud, particularly if you look at Social Security. In fact, according to an IG report from the Social Security Administration, there was $71 billion worth of fraud in one single fiscal year that we know about.
To be clear, that $71 billion was from 2015 to 2022, so it wasn't in just 1 year.
It's clever now to say fraud is a crime. If there's really fraud, that means there's criminality. Shouldn't it be prosecuted? And she goes, oh, that's so cute. That's so clever, Peter. Until they show us evidence of any of this stuff, I would wait to believe it. Do I think there is no fraud in government contracts? No. I believe there is some fraud in government contracts. Any large organization, be it for-profit or governmental, you're going to find some fraud. The bigger it gets, the more fraud, in theory, you're going to find. Is it materially relevant to the point of saying we need an unelected bureaucrat to start slashing randomly, emailing employees and saying, justify your job to me? It's not the way to find the actual fraud. We have systems in place. And you know what? If you better wanted to be able to find the fraud, maybe don't fire the inspectors general, who could actually be there to figure out what really happened, where have there been crimes, and make sure that they are dealt with appropriately. These people are pathetic. I will believe that there is fraud when they actually give us the proof. Many of us have struggled with sleep at one point or another. A sleep aid many turn to is melatonin because it's a non-pharmaceutical remedy clinic.
Swallows nest when skies are fair, but hide when storms
Dollar.
are in the air.
There was a big rally in the dollar on Thursday. I talked on my last podcast, my Tuesday podcast, about how the dollar was rolling over. Well, it had a big rally on Thursday because that's when Trump came out with another post that the tariffs that we thought, weren't happening, maybe we dodged the bullet. They're coming on Tuesday. On March 4th, we're getting 25% tariffs, supposedly, on the goods that we want to buy from Canada and Mexico. And another 10% tariffs on top of the tariffs that we already have on the goods that we want to buy from China. And so when the news of these tariffs came out, there was an immediate rally in the dollar. Because again, this is the algorithm pre-programmed to buy dollars on tariff news. This is not bullish for the dollar. But if that's how they've been programmed, garbage in, garbage out, so we got a dollar rally. I don't think it's going to last, especially when you look at the trade deficits. And I'm going to go over a lot of the economic data that came out in the last couple of days. But the worst piece of news that, again, gets very little coverage was the trade deficit, the merchandise trade deficit. They call it the goods deficit now. Back in the 80s, 90s, we called it the merchandise trade deficit. I don't know why they stopped calling it merchandise, but now they just call it goods. But anyway, so last month was the record. Right? It was 122 billion. It was the worst trade deficit in goods in U.S. history. Well, it was the worst until we got January's number, which blew that number out of the water. So the consensus estimate was for a small reduction in the trade deficit in goods, down to $116 billion. Instead, it skyrocketed to $153.3 billion, just blowing away the worst trade deficit in 1 month that we've ever had. Now, maybe a chunk of this is due to the front running of the tariffs. But why didn't that get built into the estimates? I mean, we all know these tariffs are out there. Yet despite that, the estimate was $116 billion, even though everybody knew that importers may try to jump in front of these tariffs by bringing stuff in now. And of course, if Donald Trump was right, if our trading partners are going to eat the tariffs and not raise their and cut their prices to make up for the tariffs, then why rush to bring them in now, right? I mean, obviously, importers don't buy what the president is selling. They know that tariffs mean higher prices, and so they're trying to buy some goods before. But I don't think it's all that. I mean, I just think our position is rapidly deteriorating. The industrial base of the United States is disintegrating. We are wasting our resources on crypto and other things, and while we're doing that, we don't have the production. We can't produce the things that we need, and we are more and more dependent on the rest of the world, which means those tariffs are going to bite even harder because we have no choice. Most of these goods that the president wants to tariff, there are no domestic substitutes. So we can't buy U.S. We have to buy foreign, and we have to pay those tariffs, or we just don't buy at all. And in the occasion where there is an American substitute, the reason we're not buying those American goods now is because they're too expensive. Right? People are struggling. People are trying to get by. And so the fact that the imports are cheaper is helping Americans get by. But if they have to buy these more expensive domestic goods instead, because the imports are now 25% more expensive, that's just going to further weaken their position. Now, yes, the big jump in the trade deficit was driven by imports. Imports did surge by 11.9%. Exports were up, but they were only up by